Been waiting all afternoon. This was the reaction from the scientists. Okay, so this is live picture. That was just a few moments ago. They had released a picture a little bit earlier on of the separation from the mothership Rosetta and the Philae spacecraft that had to go and try and land on Comet 67P. Robert Nisbet is at the European Space Agency in the German city of Darmstadt. Looks as though it's gone according to plan.
Just changed, so there is telemetry coming.
Absolutely, these are extraordinary scenes, aren't they? It was fairly muted this morning when they first realized that separation had happened, that this mini spacecraft had left the orbiter and was heading towards the comet, but progressively throughout the day, as each hurdle, arguably a higher hurdle, has been cleared, they've been more and more demonstrative, and that was an absolute cry of joy. You saw Paolo Ferri, who is the mission director, who has a lot riding on this, obviously, leaping up, punching the air and hugging his colleagues. It means in effect that that dishwasher-sized spacecraft that was flung at this spinning comet has landed. Now, where it has landed, whether it's landed on clear ground, which is what they wanted, or rocky, slightly more difficult terrain for it to anchor itself to, we're going to have to wait for more data to come back. But in effect, what has happened now is the spacecraft has landed on the comet, it's sending information back to the orbiter, and the orbiter is sending that information 300 million miles back to here in Germany, and we've got that confirmation now.
When you observe the solar system now, actually, we do not understand why life started here and not other ways. And we are convinced that really the keys were in the origin of the system itself, the process that really governed the modeling of the different pathways. And the comets have this beauty of having preserved the composition of the ingredients out of which all the solar system formed. In particular, we know that comets are made of ice, so they should be very bright. They are darker than that. Why? Because most of the carbon is in form of complex molecules that were formed prior for the planet themselves to form, probably a high level of complexity. And we are essentially convinced that these molecules, with a specific composition and structures, when they were fed in the oceans of the Earth and possibly of other planets, were the missing link to the emergence of life. And so one of the questions is, okay, what are these constituents? And second, are these constituents and this process specific to our solar system, or are they generic in the universe? In other words, these should tell us some clues whether or not we are alone in the universe.
You know what I find so pathetic about these evolutionists? Is that they shoot their mouth off about evolution not having anything at all to do with the origin of life through abiogenesis. And yet here they are claiming that it occurred by means of panspermia, that once upon a time a pile of rocks floating in space containing the amino acids, the basic building blocks of life, splashed into the water, starting their long process from protocell to man. And their only evidence of this is the mere existence of amino acids. Because these people that call themselves scientists believe, despite the complete lack of evidence, that these organic molecules with a magic wand of time will magically form themselves into proteins. This is the level of absurdity that they are going to. According to these people, if I give Humpty Dumpty enough time, he will magically put himself together again. And they believe they will solve this problem they have with abiogenesis by throwing the problem into outer space, as far away from Earth as possible, as long ago as possible. And in the case of this Rosetta space mission, in the form of floating rocks, we have people out there still falling for this rubbish despite the experiments that were done years ago, showing that panspermia is nothing more than a myth that belongs to the realm of science fiction. A few years ago, rocks were attached to the heat shield of a Russian spacecraft and smeared with a bacteria that allegedly resembled a germ from Mars. And on re-entry, the bacteria was burned to a crisp. Despite the rocks being about 2 centimeters thick, it still did not survive. And the evidence proposed in the reports shows that the real meteorites entering our atmosphere at much greater speeds will heat up even faster, which will require an even thicker shield. So no matter how you look at it, it cannot happen. But to the heathens that believe in evolution, the mountain of evidence stacked against their beliefs do not matter. They have to believe this rubbish no matter what, because this is a desperate attempt to explain away the origin of life without God. For anyone who's been paying attention to what's going on, who has watched my videos, it shouldn't take an understanding of rocket science to see where this rubbish is headed. According to these people, since they believe this event took place in the deep recesses of Earth's history, then it must have happened on other planets as well, which means that there must be alien life out there somewhere according to the evolutionary faith. Now, I already have my suspicions about the so-called science behind space travel in any form in itself, and the fact that these space agencies are all rooted in evolutionism. It is a reason in itself for any Christian not to believe a word coming from any of these agencies, because in all likelihood, the alien deception will start with them, and with groups like SETI. These agencies have been given the authority of a scientific priesthood. It's as if whatever they say is absolute truth, as if God himself is speaking. There is nothing peer-reviewed about any of the research coming from these space agencies, which makes it the perfect hoax, as no one will be able to validate the claims coming from this Rosetta mission but themselves. So keep this in mind as time goes along.
And now, the theory is that an asteroid smashed into Mars 15 million years ago, knocking pieces of the planet into space. About 13,000 years ago, one of those chunks landed at Earth's south pole, carrying a message from Mars.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you just heard. I'm not sure what you just heard. I don't know what's going through your minds, ladies and gentlemen. But I can tell you this is what I heard.
Beware the astro-zombies. They mutilate, they torture, they kill. Spine-tingling horror, unspeakable shock, and breathless excitement will grip you as you watch living organs ripped from the bodies of voluptuous females, as beating hearts and throbbing brains are transplanted to create the astro-zombies. Cringe in terror, scream in fright as these skull-faced monsters strike blindly at living flesh, and the motion picture screen flows in the blood-drenched wake of the astro-zombies. The beautiful, voluptuous, deadly, vicious Satana, a woman who would stop at nothing to gain control over the astro-zombies, whose creed was kill, kill, kill. John Carradine as the deranged scientist, Wendell Corey as the doctor who opposes him, match wits in this bloody, sadistic, terror-filled, suspense-laden horror film of brutal mutilations and senseless killings as the astro-zombies go berserk and threaten the city with death. Watch it and you die 1,000 deaths. The astro-zombies in color, coming soon to your local theater.
Oh yes. Oh yes, didn't I predict this, ladies and gentlemen? They must convince you that there is life on other planets. But this is the biggest bullshit hoax of all. I mean, this takes the cake, ladies and gentlemen. This comes from NASA. This comes from NASA. NASA, the great hoax perpetrator, the great photograph faker. NASA, the great liar. Oh boy, isn't this something? NASA. Here is an agency, ladies and gentlemen, that we have proven has faked one photograph. One photograph? How about 2 photographs? How about 3 photographs? How about 4 photographs, folks? We have proven that they have faked 4 photographs of the supposed Apollo landing on the moon, of spacewalks by astronauts. How about 5 photographs? 5? That's not enough. How about 10? How about 50? We have proven that they have faked 50 photographs. That's not good enough for you? Well, how about 100? We have proven, beyond any shadow of any doubt, and not just me, and not just Renee, and not just many others, countless thousands of people have proven that NASA has faked literally hundreds, not 100, not 200, not 300, but hundreds. So many they can't be counted are fake, phony, and even the grossest amateur can spot the fake pictures once somebody clues them in. You would be amazed, since I've done the broadcasts on the phony, fake information that NASA has given us about the supposed Apollo moon landings and the NASA official photographs of the Apollo moon landings and the spacewalks by the astronauts and all this other baloney that they've been feeding us for years. You would be amazed at how many people who don't have any background in photography, who don't know anything about space or physics or rocket science or anything else, have gone to their own libraries and pulled out NASA's own publications containing those pictures and have sat there and laughed and laughed and laughed and rolled on the floor once they spotted it with their own eyes. And then they wrote us hundreds and thousands of letters telling us how they have confirmed themselves that NASA's photographs of the Apollo moon landings and of spacewalks and all kinds of things are fake, phony.
A team of scientists who've been studying it have come to the dramatic conclusion that these tubular structures lodged in clay inside the meteorite represent life, fossilized bacterial forms 3.6 billion years old. But they are being very careful to say that is just their opinion.
Lodged in clay, ladies and gentlemen. Lodged in clay. Inside this little potato-shaped rock, there's clay. And they claimed the clay had to come from Mars. Well, how about if the clay came from wherever the meteorite was sitting for the last however many years it was sitting in Antarctica, because they claimed that it was knocked off of Mars by another meteorite. A great meteorite flung through space and smacked into Mars and broke off this little chunk of clay that then went out flying through space and fell down to Earth in Antarctica, right in a big puddle of clay. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, that right here on Earth there are microbes that eat rocks and live in clay and eat crystals? Did you know there's microbes that eat granite? And they live in rock right here on this Earth. Did you know that? Did you also know that as some rock crystallizes, it takes the shape of biological organisms on a microscopic scale? That's a scientific fact. But nothing that NASA is telling us is a scientific fact. It's not even science fiction. No good science fiction writer would ever write this bullshit. And boy, do they think we're stupid.
They could be microfossils from Antarctica or microfossils from Mars.
Did you hear that? That was the NASA scientist who announced that they proved that there's life on Mars with this little potato-shaped rock, and he says that what they found in this little potato-shaped rock could be microfossils from Antarctica. He admits it. Or he says it could be microfossils from Mars. But you know how they proved that this little rock came from Mars? Well, they compared it to the makeup of another meteorite that came from Mars. How did they prove that the other meteorite came from Mars? Well, they can't, ladies and gentlemen. They can't. Out of all the planets that must be out there in this universe, all over the place, and all of the suns and the junk and the asteroids and just the crap that just floats around out there from who knows where, this little rock came from Mars.
It is our interpretation, the one that we favor, is that these are, in fact, microfossil forms from Mars.
They'll have to go a much longer way in their research to prove it.
The biological interpretation at this point, I claim that, in my opinion, it's probably unlikely. But it's possible to do additional science to answer these questions, to test this and move it up the confidence scale.
And that's only the beginning. The material will be reviewed by scientists all over the world who will be searching for flaws in the Discovery Team's theory. It's part of the scientific process. NASA Administrator Daniel Golden agreed that no one can afford to take it without question.
It means we're right on the edge of a potential unbelievable discovery that's going to rock our world if it's true.
That's going to rock our world if it's true.